everybody, this is Everyday Commentary, and this is an overview of this knife. And this knife is the Spyderco Roadie. And the Spyderco Roadie was a knife designed by Spyderco when TSA put out their preliminary rules for folding knives that could go on airplanes. And they had all these really weird regulations. Like, they wanted the blade to be under 2.46 inches. They wanted the handle to have no molded grip. And obviously the no autos, that kind of stuff. It was just a really weird sort of random assortment of things. I did some digging. The only thing I could think of was maybe the 2.46 inches was based on centimeters or something, and it had to be compliant with rules for, or it was easier to make it compliant with rules for flying in other areas. I don't know. The bottom line is the rules were really complicated, and a couple of knife manufacturers took the initiative, and one of them was Spyderco, and I know that the other one was Emerson. Obviously, the knives could not have a lock, so that was the big thing. So there was an Emerson that was produced in a prototype stage, and then the Spyderco produced the Roadie. Well, at the very end of the comments period, apparently groups inside the aviation industry sort of rallied together and said, no, we're not doing this. And so the TSA got rid of the rule, and you still can't carry a folding knife on an airplane. It strikes me as kind of silly because, like, you know, the pilot has an axe, you can, whatever. That's not the point. The point is, this knife still got made, and we are really lucky that it did, because this is one of my very favorite slip joints that I own. And I own a couple of really nice slip joints, old-timey, old-fashioned slip joints. In a lot of ways, this knife reminds me of the Pingo, not only because it two-handed open and a non-locking blade with FRN handle and the Spyder logo there, but also because of the blade shape. Now, the blade is a little longer than it is tall compared to the Pingo, but this sort of gentle curve, the point, and there's a lot of similarities in terms of how the blade actually works. But the knife is exceptionally light. It weighs around 1 ounce. The blade is under 2 inches, and I think the cutting length is, or under 2.5 inches, and the cutting length is just under 2 inches. A lot of knives this small are really uncomfortable in the hand, but I have to say that maybe other than the Dragonfly, there's no small knife that I find better in the hand than the Roadie. And it's just a little bit of stuff. It's the choil, and then it gives you a full 3-finger grip for an average sized hand. The other thing is, if you choke up, you can put your thumb right behind the cutting point and get a little more leverage when you're doing cutting tasks. The blade is N690, which means that this is probably a Lion Steel produced knife. Not sure, but most of the N690 stuff in the Spyderco lineup is made in Italy, and it looks like a lot of it is made by Lion Steel. A couple really interesting things. First of all, instead of a traditional nail neck, and obviously they couldn't do one-hand opening, they have this little disc, and the disc is basically just like a dimple in the blade steel, and it gives you just the right amount of leverage to pull this blade open. If this was a traditional knife, let me see if I can do it. The walk and talk's not great. This thing is not like a bear trap. But what you do get is you do get a full half stop, so it's pretty secure there, and then it pops open. And when your finger's here, it's really hard to sort of get this knife to close on your hand. I mean, your finger in the finger choil acts as something of a blade stop too. But when you have everything closed up, it's a very slim package, and yet it's still super accessible because of that little dish space, that little divot, the dimple. I love the Spyderco Roadie. It's a great little everyday carry knife, especially in a country where you can't have a lock or you can't have two-hand opening. And even if you're in a place like where I live, where you can have all those things, it's still a really great knife because it's so slim, so light, it cuts well, and it fits great in the hand. One last note is, look at the blade steel on this knife. The blade steel is really unusual in that it gets thicker right around the divot point. Now, I know why they did that, so that they could have room to put the divot in, but that's a very unusual thing to see on a knife, that it gets thicker towards the tip. This is also really thick blade stock for a knife this size, but they've given it a really nice full flat grind, and it just cuts. So if you're looking for a cheap knife and an unusual knife, I really heartily recommend the Spyderco Roadie. This is a great and fun little knife to carry. So look for a full review on the Spyderco Roadie soon, but until then, I'll see you later.